Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Vishveshvari Mata ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai. We'll continue with chapter 25 from the Devi Bhagavatam retold by Ramesh Menon. Then King Janamejaya wanted to know about the two other invincible asuras, Sumba and Nisumba, who had also tyrannized the worlds once, and whom the Devi slew. Who were they, Muni, that dreadful twain? Vedavyasa said, Kalpas passed after Maheswara's death. The wheel of time spun around, and at times the Devas and Dharma would rule the three worlds, and at other times great asuras with a boon would usurp Indra's throne in Devaloka and establish a reign of darkness over the Triloka. Usually an incarnation of Vishnu or Shiva would kill the demon, and peace, truth would return to creation. But after many Manvantaras, two asuras were born called Sumba and Nishumba. They were brothers and awesome demons. Once, when they were still youths, they came out of Patala, their home, and arrived at Pushkara, Brahma's lake, that is perhaps the most sacred place on earth. They sat there in flinchless tapasya without eating or drinking, locked unmoving in yoga asana, their breath so controlled that they breathed barely 5 times a day. It is told that they sat for an adyuta, 10,000 years in dhyan. Their Pitamaha, the Lord Brahma, was pleased with them. He flew down from Brahmaloka on his swan and stood before those two demons. Softly, Brahma, the creator, called those two demons out of their dhyan. When they opened their eyes, after so long, they saw him, the resplendent one. He said to them, Demons, I am pleased with your tapasya. Tell me, what boon would you like, and it shall be yours? The emaciated asura's faces and bodies were covered by 10,000 years jata, yet they shone. They rose painfully and walked around their lustrous grandsire, heads bowed and hands folded. They came before him again, and they were so frail and weak that they collapsed at his feet, panting from the effort of just one circumambulation. Their voices choked. They said to him, O Brahman, Pitamaha, Lord of gods, there is nothing more terrible in this world than death. Ocean of mercy, if you are truly pleased with us, grant us immortality. No one in the three worlds can give you that boon. All that live must die. It is the law of nature. Why, even I, Brahma, and will know death when the time comes for the stars to be extinguished. Ask me for anything else, demons, and I will give it to you. Immortality is not in my power to bestow. The asuras conferred amongst themselves, and the time had come, after so many ages, for someone else to ask for ancient Maheswara's boon. Sumba and Nishumba had perhaps never even heard of that ancestor of theirs who once asked Brahma for the very boon that they now asked for. Sumba said, Lord, grant us that no male of any race or species of Swarga, Bhumi, or Patala can kill us. No devas or Gandharvas or any of the celestials, no demons, no danavas, asuras, rakshasas, gangas, bhutas, yakshas, no man, bird, fish, or beast. There is no woman anywhere that can harm us, so we won't ask for a boon against woman. Brahma, who remembered Mahisa of old, smiled. The thought flitted across his mind that perhaps it was time again for the Divine Mother to incarnate herself. The Pitamaha said, I grant you your boon, asuras. When Brahma had vanished before their eyes, Sumba and Nishumba went back to their home in Patala. Now they called Great Brigu, best of the Munis, and told him about the tapasya and the boon they had from Brahma. He saw that the future belonged to those demons and agreed to be their priest. He wrought an auspicious golden throne, and on an auspicious day, Shumba, who was the older, was crowned king of his people. Word went out like wildfire that once more a great sovereign sat on a throne in Patala, and asuras from the three worlds who had lived in an abject condition for a yuga, toiling under the Deva's yoke, swarmed to Sumba. Millions of fierce and bitter demons came, wanting to have power again and honor. Among the greatest demons that arrived to serve Sumba, the new emperor of darkness, were the feral brothers Chanda and Munda, of untold strength, and their legions that had repulsed Deva armies across the galaxies. Dreadful Durmara Lakana arrived with his sinister forces to discover for himself whether the new demon emperor was indeed worth serving. When he saw Sumba and felt the demon's immense power, he stayed and became one of Sumba's chief commanders. Sumba and Nisumba's armies swelled, and with it their power. 1,000 great asuras and rakshasas who had resisted the devas on far-flung worlds, heard about the new king with the boon who now sat upon the throne of Patala. And they came streaming to him in chariots and vimanas and elephant back, or riding great birds, tigers, serpents, and other stranger mounts. The renowned and terrible Ratabija, Danava with great boon himself, arrived with 2 fearful armies. These monstrous asuras were indestructible, for if one drop of his blood fell on the ground in battle at once, 1,000 identical demons sprung from it, each one as savage as Ratabija himself, each one armed to the fangs and bloodthirsty. The learned Ratabija, who had also once been a Tapasvan, was welcomed warmly and made a prominent general of Sumba's army. The renown of the new demon sovereign in Patala and his vast army spread across the worlds, and the devas were disconcerted in heaven. But the canny Sumba made sure that he was truly prepared for war with the Lords of Light before he sent his macabre legions out to battle. They spewed from the nether world like some plague, millions and millions of ferocious asuras, interminglable legions, with just one purpose in their hearts, to conquer all the created worlds. Every demon of the endless army was prepared to die for his cause. They swept over the kingdom of earth in a tide, and no human king could resist them. Many nations of the earth joined the Asura's army or became their agents, thinking that surely the future belonged to the mighty king in Patala and his brother, who were said to be immortal. These nations and their people who sold their souls to evil were given great wealth and power in the world. Their kings wielded subtle sorcery over other nations and had weapons and armies that could not be resisted by these lesser nations, which still served Dharma. When the earth was subdued and the law of evil established more or less across the face, Nishumba took a huge army of men and demons and invaded Devaloka. Indra met that demon legion at the gates of Amravati, and battle broke out. Thousands fell on both sides. Fell Asuras and Rakshasas and blithe Gandharvas and Kinnaras. Finally, Indra himself rode into battle, mounted on his white Aravata. Nishumba had been waiting just for him, and they fought. When a day went by and neither the Deva nor the Asura seemed to gain any advantage, Indra cast his Vajra, a diamond thunderbolt, at Nishumba. The weapon of 1,000 jagged points struck the demon squarely in his chest with an explosion like a star bursting asunder, and the demon fell unconscious. Yet even that weapon, which could have raised a whole army, did not kill the demon with Brahma's boon. Word flew down to Sumba on earth, and he arrived at once in Devaloka in a thought-swift vimana and flew at the Deva host. His archery was matchless, and thousands perished before the tide of arrows with which he swept the legions of Swarga. Gandharva blood, Kinnaras, and Deva blood flowed in rivers. The Lokapalas, Yamas, Varuna, Kubera, Indra himself were beaten back by the Asuras. Agni, Vayu, Surya, Soma, Kama, the Vasus and Ashvins, the Adityas and Marat, and all the rest he routed. They fled in terror of him, for they saw that all their starry weapons were of no avail against Sumba. Sumba marched into the heavens with his legions, and everything in heaven was now his to enjoy. The Parijata, the tree of wishes, Kamandenu, the cow of plenty, all the untold wealth and power of Devaloka, the Apsaras as well. Sumba set his demons, Ratabija and the rest, on exalted thrones, and they ruled the three lokas in place of the Devas. Sumba himself ruled the realms of Indra, Kubara, Soma, Surya, and Yama. He received the worship of every sacrifice on Swarga, Bhumi, and Patala. His power was unrivaled. Nishumba held sway over the domains of Varuna, Agni, Vayu, and Akasa. When the Devas fled celestial Amravati, it is said that the demons' brothers sported with the gorgeous Apsaras and the charmed Nandana, and that they drank Amrit there from the hands of the nymphs who were not past enjoying the company of the virile and darkly elegant demons. The Devas fled into the wilderness and lived in desolation in mountain caves and in the hearts of deep jungles and trackless deserts. They, the lords of heaven and earth, lived like beggars in shameful exile. Fortune had deserted them, and their lives were as inglorious now as they had been majestic when Indra sat on the throne to which the three worlds pay homage. Darkness fell on creation, for an Asura was sovereign in the Devaloka, and his demons were masters of the elements of time and destiny. Evil kings loyal to Sumba and Nishumba, creatures of night that served their eerie lord's purposes, ruled the tenuous earth. Men fell to greed and lust, to thieving and murder. Rapacity of every sort held sway. Ignorance and sorrow shrouded every heart, and anarchy was the order of the day. Thus 1,000 years passed, and evil held all the races and kingdoms firmly in its clasp, while the terrible Sumba was lord of heaven and earth. The Devas were all but forgotten. They roamed the outer waste like lunatics, often in disguise, for the Asuras would kill them if they were discovered. Yet Indra and his people hardly needed to disguise themselves any more, for the luster of their bodies had faded in 1,000 years, and they looked like common beggars. One day, when their old arrogance was quite crushed and abject despair seized them, the Devas came to their guru Brihaspati in a pitiable throng, and Indra said, "Master, save us. We are in hell. Perform some potent yagya that we may vanquish the demons." Their wise guru said with a smile, "Yagyas and mantras are helpless against destiny. You are the very Devas whom the mantras and yagyas invoke, and look at you, now that fate has turned against you." Brihaspati was thoughtful for a moment, then he said slowly, "My lord, in ancient times that have all but vanished from memory, there was another great Asura with a boon exactly like the one that Shumba and Nishumba have. So many ages have passed since then that I think you have forgotten even the names of Mahasura. So many yugas have passed that the immortal Devas had indeed forgotten Mahisa. But Indra remembered something. Wasn't he the demon who was a buffalo son? Yes, and he too couldn't be killed by any man or any of the races. Then how did we kill him? You worshipped the Devi Bhagavati, and she appeared on her golden beast and killed the Asura for you." The Devas remembered now. Brihaspati went on, "Only the Devi can help you. You must worship her. I can feel it in my blood. It is time again for her to incarnate herself, for I fear men have forgotten her. I have heard that ever since she was born as Uma to be Rudra's wife, The Devi dwells on the Himalayas, for he is Parvati's earthly father. The Devas bowed down to their sage master and took themselves to the white Himalayas, where they sat in dhyan at the cave mouth within which they had been told by some munis that the Devi dwelt. Without pause, they chanted her Bij mantra, the blessed hymn. They became immersed in the pristine syllable that is verily the Devi herself. The Devas forgot themselves in their worship. At times, spontaneously, praise of the Devi would flow from one or the other's lips, while he who spoke was unaware that he had spoken. Suddenly, Indra would explain in rapture, "O Devi, mercy and forgiveness are but thy manifestations." Or some weeks later, Agni would cry, "Thou art the seed of the universe, the beginning and the end of all times." Or Varuna would whisper a vision he had, "Mother of galaxies, mother of the three fathers of time." Vayu would breathe, "The worlds have forgotten you, Bhagavati, come amongst us again." And one day, when an age had passed, the Devas felt a blinding light enfold all the mountain where they sat in meditation. They opened their eyes and saw the goddess before them. Ah, she was young. Hers was the loveliness that defined beauty. Hers was the light from which all other lights flowed. She smiled at them so their hearts were swept with bliss, and said in a voice like a rumbling cloud, "Whom are you calling to so desperately, Suryas? Upon this icy mountain of the earth, why are you here and not in your heavens? The one of light were all aquiver. The ones of light were all aquiver at her presence of grace, at her stunning beauty, at her salvational voice." They said to her in awe, in huge love, "Devi, Bhagavati, Shumba and Nishumba torment the worlds. They have cast the Devas out of Devaloka and rule the three worlds in our place. Evil stalks creation, and demons like Pratyabija, Chanda, and Munda hold sway over time and the elements. Like Mahisura of old, Shumba and his brother cannot be slain by any man. You are our only refuge, Mahamaya, merciful mother, save us." And the Devas wept before the goddess. Said Vedavyasa of matchless intellect and wisdom to King Janamejaya. Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Vishveshwari Mata ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai.